All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Brand and Bank. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about workplace gossip. Yeah, so we've seen so much of that going around in different, organizations where people they just go at it. And so, can we talk about how workplace gossip really starts, though? Right? So, I think that, people come in to work and then the first thing they do is they start to make like little comments about a coworker. It could be something, something minute, something casual, like for example, "Oh, I don't like that lip color you're wearing." But it doesn't stop there. Now it starts to attack you on a personal level, on a professional level. The gossiping turns to complaining. How how do you see in your experience, if any, how it has started in workplaces?
Say, thinking back, I feel like gossip is an element of every workplace. And, I've had a few different jobs and it always takes me, it doesn't take that long to kind of realize who the people are who are kind of driving the gossip. And I always feel kind of like icky around them. So, like every time I talk to them, I just have this like bad feeling about myself afterwards because it makes me feel bad when I talk bad about other people. But when you're new and you're trying to fit in, usually these workplace gossips, they have like a lot of people around them and they have a lot of pull. It always feels like. And so it's easy to get sucked into it. And I admit I've definitely gotten sucked into it before, but it makes me feel worse about myself if I engage in it. But going back to your question of like how it starts, I think it starts in a place of insecurity, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think these people are trying to find their value in other ways besides just performance.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to get job security or something. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that point about starting at a place of insecurity because the saying is true: hurt people hurt people. And so, if you are insecure and if you're hurt, you're going to try and bring down as many people with you as possibly can. And I think most people target the people that are less popular, could be less aesthetically beautiful in their eyes. And so they look at that person as a target. And so I think it starts from that place of somebody just being insecure in their own abilities. And then from there, they try to bring on other people. They try to get the
You know,
number.
yeah, and I think so. I think it is sometimes they pick on the weaker person, but sometimes I think it can stem from jealousy,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Sabotage. If you talk about someone, if you turn people against someone, then they're no longer a threat,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And let's talk about how it impacts you as the gossipy, you as the gossiper, and then the organization in general, because there's so many moving parts to this, and there's so much damage that can be done from gossiping. So I think that it affects the person who's been gossiped about in a negative way. The hurt, the trauma that can cause. Some people could lose their jobs because now you have somebody gossiping about them and then spreading lies and rumors that can cause that person to be fired, as well as that person can just, you know what, I've had enough. I'm exhausted. I'm scared. People have been scared to even go to work, traumatized, and they're just like, I'm done. And they leave their livelihood. So from that perspective, I just talked about how it impacts the person who's being gossiped about. How do you think it impacts the people who are actually doing the gossiping?
You know, honestly, I think that it hurts the people doing the gossiping more than it hurts the person being gossiped about.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it definitely hurts the person being gossiped about, right? Especially because you can tell when people are talking about you. And so it makes you uncomfortable and not feel safe in your environment. And it can definitely traumatize you. But the people doing the gossiping, they're making themselves look bad, really. Because if you think about it, everyone that they're talking to knows what they're doing. And they know that ultimately, even if they're sucked into participating, they ultimately know that they can't trust them either. And that does end up getting back to management in one way or another. And so when it comes time for promotion or time for layoffs, usually it's the gossiper on the block before the gossipy, right?
Yeah,
Because
the toxic
you know
people.
how some yeah, you know how sometimes people say any attention is good attention,
Yeah,
right?
not good.
I've heard that before. I don't know. maybe someone was trying to make me feel better if I was being talked about. No, like, really, if someone's paying attention to you, that means, well, it means you're doing something. It could be something wrong or something right, but you're doing something. You're not just
Yeah,
sitting there invisible.
yeah. And so how do you think it affects the organization in general with having this,
The
the gossiping going back and forth?
Yeah, and so that goes back to why I think it hurts the gossiper more is because it hurts the organization as a whole. It impacts productivity, and if management sees it and can trace it back to the gossiper, then I think they're the one on the chopping block. If they can trace the root of the problem back to them, then management's going to do something about it.
Yeah. And so, how do we end gossiping? You're in an organization where there's gossiping and you don't want to participate in it, or somebody's constantly bringing it to you. What are some of the things that, you as an employee can do to just kind of like combat that or to just like separate yourself? I think you can just politely say, I don't want any part of that. And then there's people who they're probably not as blunt as me that says, okay, I'm out. What would you suggest them to do or say to kind of make sure that they're staying clear of that sort of toxicity?
So I would say make your default to always twist a negative into a positive because, yeah, that can also help the gossiper maybe retrain their own thinking a little bit, right? Because they might not really mean to do it either. It might be their go to or their default.
Mhm.
Because I don't think gossipers are evil or, necessarily trying to be malicious all the time, but they maybe need to learn better methods of coping with conflict in the workplace. And so there's another solution. Maybe management can do some conflict resolution training for employees
Yeah,
and team building exercises too.
it's a good one. That's
Yeah.
a good one. And then one thing I can also touch on is the fact that sometimes the people who they don't want any parts of the conversation, they themselves might be afraid to speak up and say, "Hey, I don't want any part of it," because of fear of now you're the one that's going to be gossiped about, like retaliation. So I think that in that situation, you have to, as an employee, if this is happening to you, just be honest and say, you know what? Like Elle says, every time somebody says something negative, try to spin that into something positive and just simply walk away and say, you know what, I have work to do. Every time somebody tries to bring you into something, find an excuse to excuse yourself. Oh, I have to go to the bathroom. Oh, I have to go to work. Or, oh, I have to do this. If that's your only way of escaping because you may not have enough courage, for lack of a better word, to say, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to gossip about somebody else, just always just find a different way to make an excuse to get out. Nobody can tell you, oh yeah, you're not hungry. I'm gonna go to lunch or I need to use the bathroom. Well, how do you know I don't? So you can make a like legit excuses just to get out of there if you just don't want to, you know, come out and say you don't want any parts of that. Yeah. Any final words on, or a little gossiping environment?
Just don't do it. Just
Just
don't do
don't.
it. Yeah.
Wise words. Just don't do it because it impacts everybody around you, impacts the gossipy, the gossiper, and the organization as a whole. Because if there's no morale, if there's no camaraderie, productivity goes down, and then people start losing jobs, and you don't want to be the one on the chopping board. And also, on a personal level, internally, you don't want all that baggage and all that toxicity on your heart, your mind, your spirit, all of that, because it's very heavy. And the weight of life is enough. You don't need the extra baggage. All right. So, all right, guys, I hope you learned something from us today. And with that said, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Brandon Bank. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care. Bye
Thank you
bye.
guys. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.